Lighting in Seneferu's procedural pipeline. In the last session, we show how the Katana template that ships with Seneferu is actually doing everything you may expect by only one click when you are loading the dependencies from the production manager, and how every asset that you have made during the production execution is being loaded, and the texture and shaders are resolved in render time, and everything or instances or anything needs to be done is being automated by the production manager. In this session, we will see how to deal with lighting and how to maintain the continuity of look and feel through the shots. To do that, we don't want to work on lighting tasks directly on per shot basis. What we should do, if our pipeline is configured that we are going to do the lighting in Katana, then you must be having on each scene, there will be a task like the project Katana template that ships with Seneferu, but in this time there will be a task in the scene level itself called Katana temp SCN, just as a reference to that this process is a scene level process, not the generic global one that is for the whole project. So what is the benefit from this task? Let's work on it first. First of all, we will set the task to current so the production manager can connect with Seneferu task control in Katana. I will set my task to in progress, and you will notice that because this is a scene level task, you will have access to everything that possibly be seen in this sequence of shots. So you will find asset components coming from all the shots belonging to this sequence of shots or belonging to this scene. So now if we go through this, the idea of having this Katana template on the scene level, that we want to build a recipe that considers everything that we are expecting to see in any of the shots, and we want to configure all these things only once, so we can do the lighting for the shots later just so quickly, because we have already configured everything, and also to maintain the setup and look and feel between different shots, because for example we will configure render layers, we can configure light linking, we can configure a lot of things that we don't want to recreate again and again, and we don't want to miss some of them on different shots, and that would definitely break the look of the shots. So the concept here is that we will load everything, we will make a template belonging to this particular sequence of shots, and accordingly when we do the load dependencies for the lighting of any of these shots later, then this scene level template will come rather than the global project template. And actually this one will be driven from or derived from this global template that again is coming to you with Seneferu. So of course you might be seeing here hundreds of objects or asset components, depending on how big your shots are and how many shots in this sequence. So going through each one of them to selectively decide what you want to load is very tedious and not the good thing, and loading blindly everything is also not the right thing. So we will rely here on Seneferu Production Manager, who will do something really nice for us actually. So as you can see, everything is selected. I will blindly load everything, but don't worry, the production manager isn't blind. He knows what he's loading and he will not do miss. So what he's going to do now, or what he's currently doing now, if you look at in the log here, you will find that the first thing he did is that he loaded the project template and he started loading things. He will load only one thing from each asset. He loaded one camera and he ignored the rest of the shot cameras. He's loading the NR hair or the hair simulation for each or for every character, and will ignore that hair from other shots, and so on. According to what is happening now, any differences between shots will be loaded. So anything that is expected to be seen in this sequence of shots will be loaded in the recipe that is being built now. So we will just relax and wait until he finishes, because he's now going through all the shots belonging to this sequence to see what should be loaded and what should not. Now everything is loaded. So in this case, you may experience things that looks broken, but they are not actually broken. What happens is that some assets are not available in all the shots. So when you switch between the shots, some of the assets will look like broken and some of them will work depending on what is available for the shot and what is not. But we will have to consider everything, even in the broken one. We will go to the shot where it's not broken, and we will do any kind of setups or configurations that we might need to do on it. So when we load the lighting, the dependencies for the lighting task for the shot that has this asset later, then we should find that this asset is already configured and is working as expected. In addition, we will copy these guys here, and because these are considered to be our render layer. So if we want to do render layers, actually, it depends on what you want. If you will do render layers, then you will copy this branch and do whatever the prune and isolate connections you need to make a new render layer. And this is doing all the setups you need for the render. So you just need to copy this branch here. And this is just for previewing your renders. And here, when you rename this node, this becomes the name of the render layer and the name of the task that all the files rendered will publish to, as we are going to see in a while. By keeping this name on the default name, this makes this as the master layer that doesn't have a special context, but it's the master render layer of the whole recipe. Anyway, we will go in details, in more details about this later, and here we can configure the if we will want motion blur or not. Of course, we will want for shots motion blur here if there is any holdout objects, as we will see in the next session when we do VFX lighting. Actually, what this scene is fully CGI. In the next session, I will go quickly on a VFX shot where we have a plate and lens distortion and other things. So for this, and also we can configure, for example, the project settings, the render resolutions, we can tweak the samples and so on. You know what you want to do. We just need to configure everything so we don't do them again in next shots. So the method how the production manager loaded things is actually relying on that you will switch between the shots from here. So now everything is loaded for as if we have loaded shot 1. So if we started now switching between shots, you will start seeing from different shot. Then you can now tweak the lights and make the overall lighting that you are expecting and the light mood for the whole scene. Test it with the different available shots in the sequence, and make sure that everything is as expected. And as we said, configure your layers and connections and matte objects, shadow objects, light linking, whatever you want to do. Just do it. And as we see, for example, if we went to a shot that doesn't have any published caches yet, you will notice that whatever is not available will look like broken, but of course we will not worry about this. We will just proceed and configure our shots. So it's this camera. For example, also we can configure variants that, let's say, for example, we want to query the available variants for this girl here, and let's go to, where is her animation? It's Pauline animation, and here it is. So we want to apply this look. We will say selected location, which is the body. And also notice that applying variant is also happening as an expression referencing from the shot. So now it's referencing from shot 6, as I said. So if we went to shot 1, you will notice that now the look is applied on the same object, the same body, but on the same shot. Here it's the body from shot 1 instead, which means that once we have configured this look for the girl for this sequence of shots, this will be always the look of her during this sequence. Once all this has been done, all what you need now is to do is to just click on publish. Then this will ask for a snapshot. If you have any render, take some snapshots for them. And this is just telling you that you have switched or changed some variables here, and that the production manager is going to reset them to the default that should work for the current task that you are working on. We will just say, of course, confirm. Then if you have any additional files you want to ingest for previewing, then give it some time. Yes, say this initial template for this sequence. Okay, so that's it. So now we will proceed and see how are we going to use what we did now in lighting and rendering the shots belonging to this scene, which is scene 3. So now let's assume that the supervisor have reviewed and tested this recipe and found that it's good and working as expected. Then we will approve it. Now let's work on lighting the shots. Since the Katana template is approved for this sequence of shots, and then any shot that has its dependencies satisfied will become ready to start. Then the user or the artist who's assigned on this task will get notified that his lighting task is now ready to start. So let's start by working on any of them. Let me take by order from shot 1. I will set the task to in progress, and notice that when I set the task to current, the production manager connects through the task control and sets the scene graph or the graph state variables, and also sets the frame range based on the proper shot frame range that the production manager actually checks the most reliable editing task to get the best and the most correct frame range. If he didn't find the suitable one, he will throw an error and will take the value from the database. The database actually is also having the value from the published and approved edit, but that's how the production manager is going to do it, to make sure that is getting the most correct and reliable frame range for the shot rendering. Also, it will consider if there are handles that were configured to be rendered for the shots, then it will be also considered. So now when I do load dependencies, what is going to happen? As usual, that the Katana template, this time it will be coming from the scene level rather than the project-based one. It will be loaded. Any assets that are not member of this template or any additional assets that were not there when we built this template, it will be added to the template, and any asset that was already there will be retargeted based on the current information of the shot, which is scene 3, shot 1. Don't bother yourself about this, by the way, because this is related to asset-based things rather than shots. Okay, so now let's do render and see if everything is going as expected. Let's turn off the motion blur for the tests, and actually let's go to this frame and start the live render. Now everything we configured in the template, in addition to anything that we that was loaded here, if it was not there with the template, everything should look proper and as expected. So all what we need to do now is to do anything that is needed to be done on per shot basis, like for example refining the lights or any minor modifications that needs to be applied. Then we can publish. The good thing that when we publish the lighting recipe, Seneferu will automatically take this to the farm for rendering and will automatically prioritize this task on the farm, so it takes the correct order and relative to the other tasks that is already running on the farm, if there are any tasks running in progress or processing. So as you can see that this is the frame, then everything resolved as expected. The fluid simulation and textures, shaders, everything is going as expected. And by the way, shading the fluid is also, it's just normally not an exception to anything else. It has a material Pyro, which is also coming with the shader library that ships with Seneferu, and this Pyro shader is designed to render both the flame and the smoke, depending on the simulation and the properties found in the VDVs. So when you publish textures like any other task or any other asset, for example, the characters or whatever, if you publish textures for that, the textures will automatically texture the flames and the smoke, as we will see in the next video when we render a test of a VFX shot that has a background plate and lens distortion and other more complex stuff. Now, assuming that we are fine now to go with final production render, then all what we need to do now is to click on publish. Publishing the lighting task will actually do a lot of things. Let's take a snapshot. Actually, I had to take it from the shot. This is just letting me know that these variables will be reset to the correct shot in case if you did something wrong. Any files to ingest, and here is an interesting part of the story. This is something in Seneferu called publishing actions. The publishing actions is something that you configure per process basis that can do a lot of things during the publishing process or before it or after the publish. The publishing actions is in this case is configured for some of the processes like the lighting to, for example, submit preview render or submit to render. This, when I click on this button, what is going to happen that this lighting recipe will go to the farm. It will take a priority based on the execution order and delivery date of this shot on the farm. So if, for example, another artist have submitted to the farm something that is planned to be delivered after this shot will take higher priority and will take place on the farm, and will, so it will continue before the other one, so to maintain the production plan. On the other hand, if you have configured any additional render layers, the system will automatically create render task for them on the database, because every rendered foot layer will go automatically to will be published automatically to the render tasks, which is Seneferu tasks, I mean, not the render farm task, because these will be automated in the comp later, as we are going to see. So I will say submit to render. This will take the recipe for rendering on the farm, and it will actually automatically, it will render the render node, not the preview one that we were viewing, because this node will have a lot of things like if you go here, it has configuring crypto matte and shadow path and AOVs and a lot of things that will be needed in the final render. So if we go to the render farm now, you will notice that the shot is being rendered, and it's also having its priority based on the shot importance in relative to the other possible processing tasks, because Seneferu doesn't only consider the lighting and rendering, but also considers processing closed simulation or fluid simulation or any kind of other processes that is configured to be supported on the farm. In parallel to this, we can, for example, start working on other shot. And notice that actually the shot that we were working on is now, it was 3 shot 1. Lighting. It's now, the status is processing and it doesn't show up by default in my tasks list because it's already done and I don't need to see it. The production manager doesn't bother you with things that you may not be interested to see them now, because it will show up to the supervisors and the production when the render is done and it's, the rendered footage is published. Everybody or whoever it may concern will be notified that there are files ready for reviewing, and the compositing artist will also be notified that his composite task is ready to start for this shot in case if all the dependencies are satisfied. Now, working on other lighting tasks from this same recipe is as easy as just setting the task to current, then automatically this will go to shot 2, the frame range is correct, everything is now referencing to shot 2. It's also recommended that when you start working on the new shot that you do just unselect the Katana template, because we don't want to load it again, and click on load dependencies blindly for all the available dependencies to the shot, so to allow the production manager to load anything that is missing. In the meanwhile, if anything is already loaded and is not related to this shot, it will automatically get broken and it will not be rendered. If it's bothering you, then you can just disable it before you submit render. So I will also submit this or to publish it, confirm. If you said submit preview render, this is configured to actually render first and middle and last frame rather than rendering the whole sequence. So notice that Seneferu Production Manager is not just managing the submission to the farm and these dependencies, but will also manage the correlations between the render layers and the lighting recipe that generates them. For example, if you have a lighting recipe that outputs 3 render layers, then you published version 1 of the lighting and you have version 1 from each render layer. Then you got a comment or a note on one of the render layers. So by disabling one, let's say that we have these 2 render layers, and now this is called for example BG, and this is called FG. By the way, this is all what you need to do to make a render layer. Don't worry about the file naming, where they are going to be rendered, and all these things will be managed by the production manager during the publish, so don't worry about that. So these things will automatically also have expressions here. So notice that these will be the render path. It's going automatically at lighting underscore FG, and this is going to lighting BG, and this will not have a name because this is the just lighting, because this is the master layer, because this is having the default name. So let's say that I publish this one now. I will get lighting recipe version 1, and this version 1 of the lighting will output render layer version 1, version 1, version 1. Let's say that I got a comment on this render layer here. So what you can do is that you will publish version 2 of the lighting, but with these two disabled. Then the production manager will understand that you want to render only this one. Because these are disabled, he will understand that your concern is only this layer. Then only this layer will be submitted to the farm, and these layers will not be processed from version 2. But this way you will be having render version 1, render version 1, and render version 2. The production manager knows later when you load dependencies for the comp which render layer to load for rendering. So he will automatically take the correct render layer version and will always know the correlations between this render layer and the lighting recipe. So you just don't need to do anything but to submit render, or to be more specific, just publish. Decide which layer you want, click on publish, leave the rest for the production manager, and the task control will take care of everything for you. Also, it's very important to know that if you want to set custom frame range for one of the layers, because not all of the layers is always have to be for the full shot range. Sometimes one layer will be just for a portion of the frame range. Then in that case you can override the frame range here by set the active frame range. So let's say that you want this from 1010 to 1 maybe 15. Actually the whole shot is about 1 second or whatever. So let's say that, then when you publish this shot, the production manager will publish this, if this is enabled, will publish this to render for the full range, and this will be published to be rendered for only this range, and if this is enabled will be for the full range because it doesn't have any overrides. So just bear this in mind when you are setting up the render layers.